Rome, riot police used water cannons and tear gas to get protesters under control. People filled the streets this weekend as part of widespread demonstrations against the country's green passes. The documents provide proof of vaccination for people who want to go back to work. Police say that they've arrested 12 leaders of the country's far-right political party following the protests. The violence forced House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to cancel her planned reading at a Catholic Mass in Rome. On Saturday, she met with Pope Francis to discuss a number of issues, including climate change. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay is in Rome and joins us now. Chris, these protests have been happening all weekend. Explain the Green Pass system for our viewers and why so many people there in Italy are against it.
Well, Lana, it's a pretty simple system. Basically, if you've been vaccinated, if you've been tested within the last 48 hours, or if you've recovered from the disease in the past 6 months, you get proof of that, and you can carry it around on a piece of paper, or you can put it on your phone like I do. You show a barcode, people scan it, or they check the numbers, and you're good to go. You need it to go into restaurants, into libraries, into big stores, virtually any kind of leisure activity until October 15th, next weekend. And here's where the big controversy comes, and here's why so many people turned out to protest against it. You'll need it to go to the workplace. That's whether you work in the public or in the private sector. And if you don't have it, you can be penalized for it. That's why we saw thousands, by some counts, tens of thousands of people turning out to the streets, some of them very violently, although it is important to mention that this is still a minority opinion. The vast majority of Italians are in favor of this system. In fact, more than 70% of Italians are already fully vaccinated. So it's not asking so much to simply transfer those records into a Green Pass. In fact, now, if you get tested or if you get vaccinated, you automatically get a Green Pass delivered to you either through email or printed out to you at the pharmacy.
Higher vaccinations in here, rate rather than here in the U.S. So people might be scratching their heads at how Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi falls into all of this. She was reportedly escorted out of Mass today over security concerns with the protests. Chris, what more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's kind of a wild story and one of coincidence. She had nothing to do with those protests. She just happened to be in Rome for a summit of parliamentary leaders from around the world who are gathering before a United Nations summit focusing on climate change. In fact, yesterday she met with Pope Francis and she thanked Pope Francis for the meeting, specifically his attention to issues that are close to her heart, like refugees, migrants, the poor, and of course, combating climate change. So she also happens to be Catholic, so it was a very, in her words, a very important spiritual experience for her. So that seemed to be the thrust of their encounter.
And Chris, as you are well aware, there's been a debate in the Catholic community about whether public officials, like Speaker Pelosi, who support abortion rights, should be allowed to receive communion. Do we know if that issue came up with Pope Francis, and where does that issue stand right now?
Well, we don't know if it came up. I mean, the Pope didn't issue a statement because he only does that when he meets with heads of state. Nancy Pelosi did issue a statement, and no, she didn't mention anything about abortion. But indeed, that is an issue that's circulating predominantly within the Catholic community in the United States, specifically amongst bishops who have been debating whether or not to even allow Catholic politicians who support abortion rights to receive communion, and that's, you know, especially significant for Nancy Pelosi and also for Joe Biden, who is the first Catholic president since John F. Kennedy. Pope Francis is scheduled to meet with Joe Biden for the very first time at the end of this month for a G20 summit here in Rome. But as to whether or not that conversation is going to come up is unknown. Frankly, I doubt it, considering that the Pope was asked about this very question on his recent trip to Slovakia on the papal flight. I witnessed him being asked this question as to whether or not priests or bishops should deny politicians communion based on their opinions on abortion. And Pope Francis made it very clear that he is against abortion, and that is the Catholic position. He is the Pope, after all. But He also made it clear that he is also a pastor, and that in his entire lifetime as a pastor and as a priest, he's never denied communion to anyone. And he thinks that when you start making these questions about denying someone communion based on their political views, well, you cease to be a pastor.
Chris, fascinating and interesting that you could hear it directly from the Pope's mouth. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Lana.